So I'm Jason, as I was already introduced before. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, folks, distinguished guests, and my dear friends. Today's talk is titled Armchair Armenians, the history of the Armenian community in India and specifically in Bombay. I dedicate this lecture and I'm in deep gratitude to the two institutions that I represent, that is the Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, St. Xavier's College, the head of the department, Dr. Anita Rani Kothari. Secondly, the Museum Society of Mumbai and the chairperson, Dr. Firoza J. Godrej, the late chairperson, Mrs. Aarti Mehta, along with various teachers like Mrs. Marina Datta, Mr. Deepak Rao, and a lot of people who have helped me, including my various teachers. So I'll take this lecture forward. The lecture will be divided into the following parts: the Armenian community in India, its history and legacy, the Armenians in Bombay, with a special emphasis on the St. Peter's Armenian Apostolic Church at Meadows Street Fort. I'll be talking about the tangible heritage as well as the intangible culture, specifically in the form of the rituals. And last but not the least, the decline and the legacy that the Armenian community leaves with us in the city as well as pan India. But before all this, where the hell is Armenia? Armenia is a nation which has Azerbaijan to its east, Georgia to its north, Iran to its south, and Turkey to its west. It was part of this ancient Armenian kingdom, and it traces its history. It was formerly known as Hayastan in memory of Hayek, a fourth 4,000-year-old character from the Bible. He's a descendant of Noah. Along with this, the area of Armenia has been named as Armenia after another descendant of Noah called as King Aram. Hence, you get the word Armenia. But why are we, putting Noah, a biblical character, and giving him so much of focus for the area of Armenia? It's because of this. This is Mount Ararat, a mountain that you can see from the city of Yerevan in Armenia. The mountain is currently in the region of Turkey. But why is it so important? We turn back to the biblical pages in the book of Genesis. We come to know that after the flood, Noah's ark came and settled on the Mount Ararat. And one of the candidates for Mount Ararat or Uraratu is this particular peak, which is in Armenia. That is the ancient kingdom of Armenia. Very It's a very important fact to note that you can look at Mount Ararat from Armenia, but it will take you around 11 and a half hour drive. You'll have to go across Georgia into Turkey and visit the mountain. So the current political map has changed, but we'll go a bit into history. When we say Armenia, we hear Armenian Christians. Why is this focus on Christianity in this particular place? When we turn back to time, we come to know that the area of Armenia was evangelized by the mission of Saint Thaddeus and Saint Bartholomew, both apostles of Jesus. This did not bring a sort of a big change in the demographics of the religion of the area, but in around the 4th century AD, a great saint called as Gregory the Great or Gregory the Illuminator brought Christianity, reinforced it in the area of Armenia. And what he did is he baptized the king Tiridates the third of the Armenian kingdom. Tiridates the third, after taking on Christianity, declared Armenia as a Christian nation and Christianity as its state religion, thus making Armenia the first Christian nation of the world, very, very much before the Roman Empire declared it as a state religion. And there we have it. Though it had Zoroastrian roots, though the king and many of the people in Armenia were Zoroastrian, they might have converted slowly but surely to Christianity, and thus we have a sizable population as such. This is a map of the ancient kingdom of Armenia, and you can see that Ararat used to fall in the ancient boundaries, and it was surrounded by the Parthian Empire to the south and the Roman Empire to its west. The Armenian Christians are part of the Oriental Orthodox churches. They are neither Catholic, they are neither Protestant, nor are they Eastern Orthodox or Church of the East. They belong to this group of Oriental Orthodox churches, which includes the Coptic Church of Alexandria, the Syriac Church of Antioch, the Armenian churches of Ekmiadzin and Cilicia, the Malankara Orthodox Church of Kerala, the Ethiopian and Eritrean Tewahedo churches of the respective countries. So this is a image showing the various heads of the Armenian Apostolic Church or Armenian Orthodox Church, along with a picture of Pope Francis. So you know that they are a distinct entity. The Armenian Apostolic Church is headed by the Supreme Patriarch and Catholicos of all Armenians, His Holiness Garigin II, and the Armenians are distinct in their ritual, customs, language, dress, and culture. Coming to armchair Armenians, where do Armenians come in the Indian subcontinent? Where can we map them? So this is a map. It shows, I've put a few points on the map, which includes Akbar's church, very close to the first Armenian church, which was built during the time of Akbar and with his help in Agra. The Armenian street in Kolkata, which is also known as Armenitola, the Armenian street in Madras, along with St. Thomas Mount, the St. Peter's Armenian Church in Meadows Street Fort, and the Dutch and Armenian Cemetery in Surat. All of these places, along with many more, served as centers in which there were Armenian communities in the Indian subcontinent. Putting a timeline and key dates for the Armenians in the Indian subcontinent, we get to know that by the 17th century, due to the land routes, we have a open connection between the areas in West Asia connecting the Orient. Hence, we know of Persians, we know of Armenians, we know of Sasanian Christians on this route. So definitely Armenians as traders in textiles, in jewelry, in semi-precious stones were on this trade route. By around 1500, Akbar sources, that is his own sources like Akbarnama, etc., along with the Portuguese chronicles of the fathers, that is the Jesuit fathers, along with the subsidiary literature, we get to know that he invites the Armenians from areas like Kashmir to live in Agra. And by 1562, Akbar is known to have patronized the first church of the Armenians in the area of Agra. 1598 points to the fact that a second church was built specifically for the Catholics, another community in Agra under Akbar's patronage. So we know that there are two distinct communities, Armenian Christian community along with a Catholic community, both living in Agra, both having churches under this cosmopolitan monarch called as Emperor Akbar. In the 16th century, late 16th century, we have an Iranian Armenian colony or a diasporic community set up at Surat. And 1579 is the oldest date that we get on one of the tombstones at the cemetery at Surat. 1605, a very important moment in Armenian history, in Indian history as well. What happens is that Armenian diaspora is set up in New Zulfa in the area of Iran. This particular community is encouraged by the Safavids and the various political entities of that time to trade with the East. And that's how these people in this diaspora, specifically the Armenians, continue to forge relations with India, and the settlements go on increasing. 1636 marks a very sad period because Akbar's successors demolished the Armenian church as well as the Catholic church at Agra because of certain reasons. 1724, the second Armenian church in India gets built at Kolkata, and we get a very important fact from various secondary sources like Messer of Jesuit's book. He tells us that the oldest tomb dates to 1630 AD. That means the settlement at Kolkata was older. That means, and people were being buried way much before the British sort of took over Kolkata, named it as Kolkata, and before Kolkata was put on the map, the Armenians were already there. It was not the British who, in a way discovered it. There were already people who were not of Indian origin who were located at Kolkata. By the 17th century, the Armenians move across the Indian subcontinent to places like Hooghly, Patna, Hyderabad, Masulipattnam, Lahore, Tamil Nadu. And I'll tell you how this works in the trade map, and I'll show you a few new discoveries that have come to light. By the 18th century, due to the port of Surat, which goes into a decline, the Armenian community migrates from Gujarat and comes to the area of Bombay, and they settle over there. And that's how you have a national church being built in the area of Fort, that is the Armenian Church in Meadows Street. Going ahead, we have the names of few important Armenians that come to us. It includes Mirza Zulkarnain, who was the son of Iskandar from Aleppo. Uh, he was a sort of a family member in a way of Akbar. They had very good relations, and he was also part of the court of Akbar. He was made a minister of salt mines in Rajasthan. This is told to us by Akbar sources as well as the Jesuit Fathers Chronicles. We have Khwaja Martinez, who was a merchant at Agra, again mentioned to us by various missions of the Jesuits. We come to know of Abdul Hai, who was part of Akbar's court at Agra during this point of time. We get to know of Khwaja Sufari, a resident of Madras. This information comes to us by the French mission. When the French were setting up the area of Madras and the area of Pondicherry, etc., they went in search of St. Thomas's tomb, and they realized that St. Thomas's tomb was renovated, maintained, and beautified by none other than an Armenian person, one of them being Khwaja Sufari. In the context of Bombay, we get to know a person named as Jacob Petrus, who built the Armenian church at Fort, the Archbishop James, who consecrated the Bombay church, Aga Jacob, who renovated the church, and we get to know of two important personalities. One is Archbishop Gregorius Johannesian. In 1876, he visited the area of Dhaka. He was a bishop of Persia, along with his charge being that of China, Japan, Burma, and India. So definitely he may have visited India. I got to know of him in the month of May, and hence I've included him. Further research is still pending. And last but not the least, our major information is gleaned from a person called as Mesrov J. Sheth, who was an Armenian settled in Calcutta, who has written a good amount of literature. And what we have done is specifically in my study, I've taken his literature as an important source, and I have continued to study and observe what he mentions and check out the evolution of the community, check out the evolution of the sources that he mentions. This is a map taken specifically in context of the Armenian settlements in the Indian subcontinent. As you can see, many of the places which I mentioned in the previous slides are already mapped on this particular map, along with the diasporic center, that is New Zulfa in Iran. Isfahan was a diasporic center where Armenians settled, and from there, the political entities used them as a very important tool for furthering trade. And because the Armenian community knew Armenian as well as Persian, the language and the script, they could be used and utilized at various places, which included the courts of various, dynasties, various political rulers. And later on, due to their trade competencies, they were utilized even by the British for furthering trade contacts. Uh, when we come to the Armenian community in India, we get two names, that is Akbar and his wife, that is Mariam ul Zamani. Usually, some sources say that she was an Armenian, but we come to know that she was not an Armenian. She was of Rajputana descent. Another lady who comes to mind is the lady Juliana, a physician to the Mughal harem. And some people say that she was an Armenian, but clearly those writers and authors confused her with the existing community of the Armenian Christians with that of the Portuguese, who were a Catholic community. The Catholic community were associated with this church called as the Akbar's church, while the Armenians were, connected with this particular church, the Church of the Immaculate Conception, a cathedral in Agra. The church was demolished in 1636, and it was rebuilt in later centuries. So the Akbar's church the Armenian church at Agra uh, lays below this particular church. I went for my doctoral research to St. Thomas Mount in Tamil Nadu, and you know how we archaeology people are. Our lives are in ruins. We go and we check out each nook and cranny, each detail, and then I realized that there are inscriptions on the floor, and then I realized, oh, there is some small little inscription on this piece of wood. I zoomed in, I checked out, and yes, this is Armenian script. So we know that before, and then I read up and I realized that the Armenians were there much before the French and the British and the Catholics reached the area of Madras. So that means they were the one of the first communities to maybe discover the tomb of Saint Thomas, the site of his martyrdom, along with the indigenous population who were already venerating the saint. Two very important people who I admire in this particular concept of the Armenians in India. The first being Mesrov Jacob State, whose literature I've used for constructing this particular lecture, as well as serves as a roadmap for anyone studying Armenian history. And second is Archbishop Gregoris. I collaborated with the Museum Walas for a good little photo shoot, and they tell you to replicate a scene from history. So I had to dig up something which was Armenian in nature, connected to India, and I found him. So that's how a new discovery was in a way made, and that's how I add him to the repertoire of the studies of Armenians in the Indian subcontinent. A very important find from the Metropolitan Museum of Art and their exhibition titled Armenia is this particular curtain. It's in linen. It has a base color of red, white, and black or brownish. It has various scenes which includes the Madonna and Child, the crucifixion of Jesus, a beautiful border, and the lower scenes depict the Armenian liturgy, the Sur Badarak, in progress. Then I realized that this is very similar to something that we get to see in India. A Mata no Chandarvo, Mata ni Pachedi, which is produced by the Devi Pujak Wagri community in the area of Gujarat. So, and this particular piece of textile is dated to 1689. It was produced in the area of Iran, and it is now part of the Ekmiadzin repertoire or collection, which is displayed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So did a Devi Pujak Wagri person go to Iran and produce this particular textile in a similar context? Big question mark. Another piece of textile that I get is a chintz kalamkari. This is from the Hali magazine 203. Recently published, and details are very scanty, specifically the date and the time period, but this is part of the repertoire of the Jerusalem church and Jerusalem community. It's a kalamkari piece, so you know that it's coming from somewhere in southern India. So were the Armenian people employing local artisans in India to produce this particular curtain and sending it to Jerusalem and Ekmiadzin and various other centers? Big question mark. Research is still pending, but since these are fresh discoveries, I thought of incorporating them. And this basically fits into the trade network that the Armenians were part of across the Indian subcontinent towards the east and connecting the Western world, New Zulfa being the meeting point. Coming to Western region, we know that by around 1790s, the Maratha Confederacy, the Peshwa, etc., were ruling in the Western region. We had British pockets, we had French pockets, we had the Rajputana region, etc., as part and parcel of the Indian subcontinent. In this context, I'll put the community of Western India, that is the Armenian Church at Bombay. This is the view of the interior, specifically the altar of the Armenian Church at Meadows Street Fort. It has a decorated frontal piece which obscures the carved altar frontal, which I'll show you all in the next few slides. The Armenian Church, the single edifice, is a meeting point for two different communities or two different churches. One is the Armenian Apostolic Church, who trace their origin to Gregory the Illuminator, and the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church, who trace their origin to Saint Thomas the Apostle. In 2008, the Armenian Patriarch Catholicos, that is Garigin II, visited the church. And in mutual discussions with the Bishop of Kolkata, which has a vibrant community and a philanthropic college, it was decided to give the church, which did not have an active population of Armenians, to the Syrian Christian community, a sister community which shares communion and can share the altar space, and the ritual is also similar. As in, they utilize parts of the altar. You can have a freestanding altar where the celebrant can move around, etc., etc. Though the language, the culture, the ritual text, the performance of the rites are slightly majorly different in a way. And hence the Syrian Christian community has now been using this particular premise with respects to the Armenian community. uh, Short little map of where it is located. This is your Bombay Stock Exchange, your Meadows Street or Naginda's Master Street as we call it, and here is your Armenian Church. Where is it though? It's rather hidden. It's hidden in this particular building called as Ararat. Ararat brings back a very, very interesting connotation. The Mount Ararat, which is part of the ancient Armenian kingdom, which is identified with the story of Noah. So, behind this building, which has a few flats which belong to the Armenian community, or actually on the lower floor of it, is the Armenian Church, Meadow Street Fort. This is a view from the Bombay Stock Exchange. This is your Ararat, the building, and this is your Armenian Church, the blue building right over here. So the Armenian Church of Saint Peter the Apostle was founded in 1796, and we get to know a person called Jacob Petrus, who built this church, and it was consecrated in the year 1796, and after which it was operational. I just did a quick Google search and I found out that there were two plaques, one in English and one in original Armenian. The original Armenian one is sadly missing today. This is the gateway of the particular Armenian church at Meadow Street. But wait, there is something here. What is this? According to oral tradition, these two anchor stones were used by the Armenian bishops to perform their penance. They would kneel on this. A more logical reasoning could be, since the harbors are close by, someone bought these particular anchor stones and kept them in front of the church. When you go to the interiors, you see that they have beautiful grill work, nice little lamps, a moderate size of seating area which can seat around 100 participants. Very interesting lamp, triple branched lamp shades. These are what you call as consecration crosses. So when the church was consecrated, the bishop would dip his hands in the holy oil and anoint all of these 12 odd crosses across the church to sanctify and consecrate this particular edifice. Then I realized that there is something unique. These lampshades are similar in design to the ones found in the Catholic Palace at Ekmiadzin. So definitely showing the Armenian connection. They also have, the Armenian church also has chandeliers showing the connection between the Armenian community and its trading with jewelry and metalworks and textiles, etc. This is the altar. The altar is now furnished with Syrian furnishings, but it would have been usually bare with minimal furnishings during the Armenian liturgy. This is how your altar would look like. It has a carving of in bas relief of the resurrection of Jesus, triple arches on either side, a frame of the Last Supper as the main focal point. The altar is raised, so you don't have steps leading towards the center, but from the sides. A good glimpse of the altar. Once again, we have two niches at the side. I'll explain the importance of this as we go to the intangible culture. I had an opportunity to climb the altar when the renovations work was going on, and many other people also did access the altar. So, it already got profaned. So, with the help of my very good friend and person from the Armenian Church, Mr. Thomas, we entered during the renovation work, and I had a good glimpse of the back portion. And then I realized there is an inscription. I got rather excited. Has a date of 1903. And then I was like, oh my God, this is in Armenian and I can't understand anything. Thankfully, there was the uh, transliteration of the inscription in English, and you can see that the altar had been erected once again in place of the old altar by someone, a lady and her brothers, in the year 1903. The church was consecrated in the 1796. That particular inscription I didn't get to see, but I got to see the renovation of the altar, the next inscription. There is also a very curious vault like structure over here with a small little piece of metal which can lift this. The mystery of what lies beneath this is rather mysterious, and no one has opened it. So that's a topic for another lecture when it will be opened. The dome of the church, this is the interior. It reflects the stars and the sky, specifically a view of heaven. So when the liturgy is in progress, the full church is full of incense, and it invokes a sense of divinity, a sense of heaven, where God would be seated on his throne and the angels would be incensing him and calling out to his name. There are also two niches either side at the bottom of the altar. One holds the baptismal font, and this is covered with a curtain when not in use. Being an archaeology person, I do go into places where I'm not supposed to go to. So I went into the storage room, and the pews of the church are over there along with these two pillars. These two pillars must have been part of the original altar. Now they are in storage. They have a unique grapevine design, which is common to most churches across Christendom. The church has in its sacristy, that is the room where the priest usually rests, multiple inscriptions. Two of these are not yet deciphered. So when I checked Meserov Set's book, they are not deciphered. Armenian priests tried to break the code, but the inscriptions are in classical Armenian, which they are not able to translate. But we get a date, 1778. Hang on. The church was consecrated in 1796, but we have an inscription dated to 1778. That means the Armenian Christian community in Bombay are dated to something around 1778, much before the church was consecrated or built. And this particular inscription is almost like a conventional Virgal or donative inscription in the Indian context, with a sun and moon motif, a Chandra Surya motif, and instead of a Shivlinga or a Jain Tirthankara or a Gai Vasuru or Ghatakalasa, it has a Armenian cross. So could this be a prototype of a Christian Virgal or donative inscription? Big question mark, and we have to wait for the code to be broken. In the sacristy, you also get the 1801 inscription. Thankfully, according to Meserov J. Seth, this is the inscription of the renovation by a person called as the son of the lady, the noble lady Tamar. Now, this particular person, what he does is, his name is Aga Jacob. He renovates the church. The church was originally built in 1796 by a person called as Jacob Petrus, and it was renovated by this person called as Aga Jacob. So we have the first inscription of the original consecration. I could not find it, may be just below the altar, which is now veiled by various furnishings. But this particular inscription, talking about the renovation of the church, is definitely present in the sacristy, the storeroom, or the vestibule or vesting room. Walking around the church, you'll get to see two tapestries. One of them is it says in English, a Mother Cathedral of Holy Ekmeadzin, the Catholico Saint of all Armenians. It has a depiction of the Ekmeadzin Cathedral, the Mother Cathedral, as we call it, the seat of the bishop. The second one is in classical Armenian, has the date of 1996, and it has this curious little cauldron on it. And then I did a bit of research, so I put it into context. The first one talks about the Armenian Ekmeadzin Cathedral, the mother seat of the Bishop of Armenia, the primate of Armenia. The second has the cauldron. The cauldron holds holy oil. This is a picture of the consecration of the holy oil, and it's held every 7 odd years. And this is how it looks. This is the cauldron with the Holy Spirit dove on it. So maybe this particular cloth was touched to the holy cauldron in the year 1996 and bought to the church. So these are basically what you call as second class or third class relics, which are touched to something holy, and they're bought as souvenirs from a holy place or a pilgrimage spot to a community which exists far, far away, something like a pilgrimage souvenir. And I got to see this. I did a bit of study, and that's how I connected it. The church becomes a meeting point for the Orthodox Syrian community in Bombay. So instead of the chants like Surpazwa surpie vudzor surpie vanma vor haryari merelot vor amen. We get to hear the Syriac chant, that is Kadishat Aloho Kadishat Hayultho no Kadishat Lomoyutho Etranalain. So this particular church now resounds with Syriac chants instead of Armenian chants. And we get a unique Samai, which has the St. Thomas cross, which is part of the Syriac Orthodox or Indian Christian community heritage over there. This church has antiquity. It is not just in the year 2000s or later than that the Syrian community used this church. In 1895, the two saints of the Malankara Orthodox Church, that is Saint Gregorius of Parumala and Saint Dionysius, were on their Yatra to Jerusalem, Ursalam Yatra. And in this, they document that they came to the area of Bombay. They wanted to board a ship to Jerusalem. They searched and they found that there is an Armenian church. But in 1895, they tell us that there was very less Armenians in the Armenian street at Meadows Street, and the priest told them that I don't conduct mass every Sunday because the population is very less, and they were not allowed to stay. But David Sassoon's office helped them, and they went to Jerusalem and they came back. But this is a very important meeting point because the Syrian Orthodox saints did visit this church. So this is somewhat a double pilgrimage site for two distinct communities in the Indian subcontinent. Parumala Thirumeri's relics are kept in the Dadar Cathedral. So if you get a chance, definitely do visit it. In the year 2017, we got news that after around the year 1915, we have an Armenian liturgy, that is a Surp Badarak, is going to be celebrated, and everyone got so overjoyed and overexcited, including me, and I was called to witness this. So I went over there, and we had an Armenian priest from the Calcutta diocese visit, conduct the ceremonies. So the prayers at the foot of the altar are conducted right in front, as you can see. Hence, there are no steps leading from the center. The priest approaches from the sides. That's how we get the side step, because everyone was wondering why the hell are the steps at the side, because the Armenian liturgy, the priest enters from the sides rather than the front. The priest goes around the freestanding altar, incensing the altar, hence the triple arches. So you know that there is movement happening. Uh, as he came along, the priest came down from the altar and incensed the whole congregation. This is the last Armenian in the city, Zabel Joshi, madam. I had the good fortune of meeting her, and the Syrian Christian community were also there with the Armenian Christian community that day. And what they did not know is, in the Armenian rite, when the priest comes to incense, you bow your head and the priest actually blesses you. While in the Syrian tradition, people stand a bit far and they take Doordarshan in most cases. So I was one who did that, and then everyone followed. The Armenian community obviously knew what they were doing. The priest goes back and continues the liturgy. I spoke about these little niches, these holes in the wall. Uh, they are not used in the Syrian rite, but in the Armenian rite, the chalice and the paten, that is the cup and the plate, which is used for keeping the bread and the wine, which transforms into the body and blood of Christ, according to Christianity. The sacred instruments, the sacred vessels, and the sacred books are stored in these niches till the time is right. It does not happen in the Syrian rite, because in the Syrian rite, the vessels are already kept on the altar. So that was a part of intangible culture that requires a community to tell you what has to be done at various points of time. Because of the the high um, altar platform, the celebrant does not walk down from the altar to give people communion. He actually kneels at the altar cliff in a way and gives people communion. This is me with Madam Zabel Joshi, one of the last Armenians of the city of Mumbai. The other two were Mrs. Nuwart Mehta, a person who wrote the first article on the Armenian Church in the Bombay Explorer, and another lady was Mrs. Rosie, who also contributed to the community. Both of them passed away. Madam Joshi is fortunately still alive and testament to the community's heritage in the city. A small little map. I'm taking you back to the fort area, and this is an 1800 map, and you can see Fort Chapel. The Fort Chapel is basically the Catholic, Roman Catholic chapel and the Roman Catholic seminary at Fort. I did a bit of research. I found one more map from Wikimedia, and you get to see Bombay Cathedral, Horniman Circle, RC Church, which is basically your chapel, and on Meadows Street, okay. And then I contrasted it with a Google map, and you get to see first lane, second lane, and you get to see RC Church over here, which is basically your Roman Catholic church or the chapel in the late 1800s. um, and the Armenian Church, which is supposed to be somewhere over here, is clearly not mentioned. Was it because the community declined? Was it because the population was so less that they were not mentioned in this map? Big question mark. We come to the graveyard. Usually a church has a churchyard and it has a graveyard, but the Armenian church at Fort does not have a graveyard. So where the hell did they bury their dead? From Mesrov State's book, we get the evidence that the Armenians buried their dead in Baikala at 5 Savta Mali Marg, which is also known as the Lane number 9 at Baikala, in the courtyard of an eminent Armenian. But I went over there personally when I was doing my research on the Armenians, and then I realized that street number 9, Victoria Road, Baikala, does not have flat ground. There is a high-rise tower where the graves would have been. So is the book wrong? Is Messerov State wrong? No. I did a bit of digging and I realized that the graves would have been shifted from uh, Baikala to Girgaon or to Sivri, which has a bigger cemetery. And there is also another cemetery at Antop Hill in the Bahai Gulistan. So few of the graves are present over there. Uh, in the late 1960s, that's where the shifting happened. The Bahai Gulistan and that the cemetery was closed. I did go out few days back to take fresh pictures to analyze the graves and stuff like that, but the graveyard was locked and the lock was rusting away. So I think the caretaker is out since March. So definitely more research can be done on that. So what happened to the community, and where all did what was their territorial extent in the city of Bombay in the area of Mumbai. They had their center at Fort. They moved to Baikala, which had a sizable population as well as a few graves. They also uh, had a bit of their graves at Antop Hill, which is the cemetery that you can see over here. So you know that they are moving from um the fort area to Baikala to Antop Hill. And in Gerson Dicuna's words, the merchants were treated with friendship and civility at Naginda's Master Street initially, and that's where they started moving. So what happened to this community? In around 1915, we get to know that there was a great Armenian genocide which occurred. A good deal of Armenians fled from their city, from Armenia. They moved to various parts, and you know that their population declined in these various centers. Even there was a single Armenian priest at the Armenian Church in Bombay, but the population dwindled so less that there were initially three, and now there is only one. The liturgy was heard, the Armenian chants were heard after 1915 and 2017, almost 100 years later. So this community dwindled in the city of Bombay because of various reasons, one being the genocide, two being trade issues, but the community grew in other places. One of the best places to find a good thriving population of Armenians is the area of Calcutta, which has the Armenian Philanthropic Academy and college. Uh, the Armenian Church in Meadows Street Fort, that is your the Fort Armenian Church. It serves as a meeting point now for the Syrian Christian community. The church is duly maintained by the Armenians. So sometimes all of a sudden they have a key. So when they come, they renovate the church, they paint the church, do a bit of painting here and they do a bit of tiling work. And the church is kept in good condition by the Armenians and is used for active worship by the Syrians. So this is where I leave it at. The Armenian Church, one edifice, which has two communities, the Armenian community and the Malankara Syrian Orthodox community, both using this church. So definitely in this time of pandemic, we can sit home and save the world, but we can also keep physical distancing and get in touch with our local history. And thank you so much for Khaki Lab for giving me this platform, and for you, my dear ladies and gentlemen, for attending this particular talk. Dur se hi namaste, and I can be contacted at the following email address. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. That was a real pleasure. You wove so many stories, you made history, you made culture, you made religion come alive for all of us. So thank you for that. Let's tell us, how did your interest in this community start off? Or is that a very obvious question?
No, it's not a very obvious question. So I was in my MA first year, and we were told to do something called as surface exploration of the local history of Bombay. So then I said I'll do something in Christianity because I have a little bit of a leaning towards it. And I spoke to my professor, that is Anita ma'am, and she led me to Deepak Rao sir, and he told me that there is an Armenian church, we can go and visit it. And I did all my research and all, and then there was this crazy idea that came into my mind. I told my mother, let's pull down the curtains and let's make up an Armenian vesting dress sort of a thing, and I'll give my presentation for 20 marks at my master's level to the class. I told my teacher, and currently my boss, that I'm going to do this for my 20-mark presentation. She said, why are you doing it with your class? We'll call the Bombay Local History Society, we'll call the Museum Society. And we held the first lecture. That was my first lecture as a student of the master's level, which I delivered with all those costumes, with incense and stuff like that. And that was my way. And then I expanded, and slowly the interest started developing, and I've tried to continue my research since 2014. And even my doctoral thesis has a bit of Armenian Christianity in it, debunking certain myths and reinforcing some others. So that's my journey for the Armenian Christians.
Wow. So you were a show and tell kind of student.
Yes.
So
very experimental.
Let's go on to quite an obvious question. You mentioned the genocide in Turkey, and you mentioned that as one of the possible reasons for the dwindling of the community in Mumbai. How were these two events related? How
What
would the
happens is that
genocide in Turkey affect the population in Mumbai?
if you see that there was an active trade network, so that means there are people coming from the various regions, which includes Armenia, New Zulfa, etc., coming via the trade networks into India. First of all, there was a fleeing sort of attitude wherein people just scram away. That is, the Armenian community ran away from the area, and they reached various ports, various cities. But also, we realized that from the late 1800s to the 1915 onwards, the community goes on dwindling. So I'm putting that as one reason, not the
Okay.
only reason, because simultaneously we see a rise in the Kolkata community.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just putting it as one possible reason of the dwindling communities, and this is ratified by also official sources from Ekmiadzin, because this is the various other diasporic communities witness a dwindling population. So they are claiming it because of this genocide.
Right. You talked in great amount of detail about the church. Were there any living areas within the fort where there were pockets of Armenians?
Fort, that
We
is
read about
the Armenian
Mumbai
street, that
fort.
is, yeah, the
Yeah.
Meadows Street was Armanitola, that is the Armenian street. So they populated the lane of the church. Many Armenian merchants married into the local population, so we had people marrying local Bombayites, and they still do. Specifically, Zabel Joshi, that is the last living Armenian of Mumbai. She's from Lebanon, but her husband is Zoshi. Okay, so he's of Indian origin. So yeah, the population was able to, in a way, marry into the local population, was able to convert them, and was able to very nicely mix about with the local population without any problem, because they allied very well with the British, with their trade interests, and that's how they got this special privilege of having an Armenian street, an Armenian church in the fort area.
So, are there any maps which talks about the old Meadow Street as Armanitola?
Not that I know of, but
Okay.
I've got it as Meadow Street, and one indication that there is the RC Church, which is the Bombay Seminary and the Roman Catholic Chapel. That I was searching for more maps, but I was not able to get my hands on a fresh map.
So, at its peak, whenever that would have been, what would have been the total population of Armenians in India and specifically in Bombay?
In Bombay, if you are giving a street-wise location, you would have around 100 to max 200 people living in the particular street. If you are looking at similar streets, so supposing if you have an Armanitola in Agra, and Agra being an important center for Mughal affairs, you would have a larger population, more than 200, obviously, along with locals who had converted or married into Armenian families with their children. So we would have a larger population. A similar population exists in Kolkata with the Armenian population and the families who have married into the community.
So, how many Armenians would still remain in Calcutta, for instance?
Calcutta, you have a sizable population of around 100 odd people with their spouses and the children, in addition to the 100 odd. So you have a
I,
sizable population of around 300 with their local, with their clergy and the ministers, etc. They have a local sports club, they have a school, they have a
yes.
college, they have, yeah, the academy, the philanthropic Armenian Academy at Kolkata. It would have been a smaller but a similar situation in Bombay, but unfortunately the community dwindled into a single person.
And we mentioned Agra. That would have been because of the patronage of Akbar.
Yes.
Uh, and these people who were in Agra, would they have been in the court of Akbar? Would they have been mercenaries of the
Okay.
kind that we talk
Uh,
about, we hear about of the French and the other Europeans who became mercenaries to the Mughals and their various
I'll divide them into
dependencies?
two parts. The first are your regular traders who traded in textiles, who traded in jewelry, who were merchants who went through various cities like Calcutta, Hooghly, came down to Masulipatam, Hyderabad, went to Mumbai, went to Surat, etc. These merchants traveling to various cities. One of them was Abdul Hai and Martinez, etc. You also have people who were in the court, who were almost like family to the Mughal emperor. Okay, and they were given high status in the court. Like for example, you have Khwaja Zulkarnain, who was basically a person in Akbar's court who had a Jagir in the Rajputana region, who was controlling salt mines, and the Jagir was hereditary. That is, his father Iskandar from Aleppo got the Jagir, and he passed it down to his son, who was also an Armenian. So you know that these people were divided into two various branches. One, the traders. The second, people belonging to the nobility and the ranks of the court.
Okay, you mentioned royal patronage in the time of Akbar. Would that have dwindled over the years? We know, for
Definitely,
instance, that Aurangzeb was rather rigid about his religion. So would that have
Yes,
continued
definitely.
with
We come to
Jahangir
know.
and
Yes,
Shah
yes, yes,
Jahan?
yes. You know that in 1636, one of Akbar's successor demolished the church. Okay,
Hmm.
and because the actually the Roman Catholics, they rubbed the emperor in the wrong side, so that's how the church was demolished. It was later on, reclaimed, renovated, rebuilt, and it was taken over by Roman Catholics at a later point of time. But definitely, the church did face the onslaught of various rulers, and this happens even, if you rub a political entity at any point of time, whether it is today or in the past, the wrong side, you know that your structure can get demolished. So yes, that was
Demolished.
it. Is yeah, it is the it's very very normal. We are all humans. We do the same thing that we were doing in the past.
So thank you for bringing a contemporary angle to that. I personally hadn't looked at it that way. Question from Commander Mohan Narayan. In Calcutta, prior to the British takeover, were there Armenians settled in and around? I may not be able to pronounce the place properly in case there's a typo. Tamralipti. Tamralipti.
Tamralipti is an ancient port. We get news of the Armenians settling in the area of Chinsura, not Tamralipti. There
Mhm.
is also another place where they settled in. But not Tamil. I did not get a clear indication of Tamil Lipti or Tamil Lipto, an ancient port, but I got more interior connotations, specifically the area of Calcutta, and the tombs are found a little bit ahead. So I was not getting the word Tamil Lipti as a key word for this particular thing. So I can't testify to this. Maybe I can do a bit of more research, because this is definitely an ongoing study. There's lots more to update.
There's lots more to update, and as soon as you decipher that script in the cathedral, we would love to hear about it first.
Definitely, 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 definitely.
The question from Dr. Kelkar is that why do Armenian names sound Catholic, Muslim, and Persian? I suppose some kind of
Yes,
amalgam that he's talking.
it's what happens is that the area of Armenia, as I'd shown you on the map, is an amalgam. It was overtaken by Persians, Zoroastrians. It was taken over by various Muslim rulers or Islamic rulers. It was obviously Christian. So you have these various influences that come into being. And even if you look at the vestments of the priest, you'll see the tall pointy hat like those of Catholics, that is called as a mitre. You will see the cope, which is more of a Syrian or a Syriac sort of a garment. You'll see the homophorian, which is more of a Greek thing. So they were, the best of all worlds in a way, on the trade routes, using various textiles, using various semi-precious stones, embroidery works, textile works, etc., etc., in their culture, in whether it's tangible or intangible, whether in their names or whether in their practices.
You mentioned the Syrian Christians and this very live example of the church being now used by the Syrian Christians. Where did the push come from and where did the pull come from? Did the Armenians offer it for worship to the Syrian Christians, or did the Syrian Christians
This is
request for it? In any case, it's a great example of synergy and doing the best for our fellow human beings.
Yeah.
So tell us a little
This is
more
this is
about
the
that.
story that I heard from my good friend Thomas from the Armenian Church. He's part of the Syrian Christian community over there who worships over there very regularly. The story goes that when the Catholicos Patriarch Garrigan II was visiting India in 2008, he met with the Syrian Christian community, which is an sister community. He also met with the local bishops who are in charge of the Calcutta community, and they were just reevaluating all of the sites present in India, the status of the Armenian community in India, and they realized that the Armenian church at Meadows Street Fort is no longer utilized. The curtains have torn, the paints have peeled. So then they told them that yes, there is a Syrian Christian community which has its cathedral at Dadar and Navi Mumbai. I think it's best to keep it alive, and since we are a sister community, there is a group of people who can use the church. Why not make use of it? And it is being used in a good way, wherein the curtains have been replaced, the paints have been refurbished, and both the communities have very well contributed to making the church more alive. And now you hear two different chants. You hear Armenian chants when the Armenian people are in, you hear Syriac chants when the Syrian people are
How
in.
wonderful. How wonderful. Are there any images of the old Akbar churches? Any paintings, any
Uh,
visual
uh,
depiction?
with regards to the Akbar Church, I got a image, but I was not very sure whether it is the same one. So I'm just checking out that. But and obviously it got demolished and stuff like that, and then it was under. So we don't have very clear images of such. Maybe they require more verification, a little more time to verify this particular link. So that's a little bit
But
about that.
would they have been in a Mughal style or style of architecture, or would they be have been more localized? Would they have been
It would
more
have been
harking back?
it looks almost merged, like mix of uh, Indian and mix of the local Armenian architecture. So but the picture is not very the image, the painting is not very clear, so it requires a bit of more examination per se.
And would the Meadow Street Church, what would it have looked like?
The Meadow Street Church, as you see currently, it has this circular dome, and it has the elongated structure. Without the building Ararat, I think it would have been a replication of one of the churches in Armenia, a similar circular dome, maybe with a conical roof, which is not present currently. Currently, the roof is more like a dome, or a an inverted cylinder, or like a under of a stupa, but it would have had that conical roof on top of that, which is sort of missing. So I think that would have been an additional part, but that was maybe lost, or it was not incorporated into the design later on, maybe due to resources, or god knows which reason.
So I'm guessing no images exist,
No,
right?
no, no, I am not getting images for the same. But when you look at the
Okay,
plan, you know that there is something missing. You know
correct.
that there is that cap which is missing onto that structure, so it would have looked like that, but without the cap.
Observation from Diksha: why is the color red so prominent in the church?
The color red is usually associated with vestments, embroideries, curtains, etc. So you have that curtain which separates the altar and from the nave and the public. Okay, is usually in the color red. The color red symbolizes the sacrifice of Jesus, the blood of Jesus, etc. It has very various religious connotation, and the colors change also during various points of time. So like during the months of the period of Easter, it is a white curtain to symbolize new resurrection and life. During Good Friday services, it is
Ah,
black, etc. So the curtain color changes. It's for normal situations, it is red or maroon on that sort of color.
Raghu's question is: cannot somebody from a university in Armenia translate the classical Armenian script?
Yes, what I did is I tried getting in touch with a few Armenian people. I tried getting in touch, but the responses were like, "We will take some time. We will take a little more time." So that little more time went on for a year, and they were not able to bring. So I still have to get a bit of more leads to that. But the priest did come, and he did try to read, and then he was also not able to very well read the script, because it is something like a Modi for Devanagari when you're reading Marathi. You can read Marathi. I can read Marathi, and I can speak a bit of Marathi, and I can read it in Devanagari. But if you give me a Modi thing, I can't read it. It's similar to the classical Armenian and the current Armenian. Words have changed.
I
The
think we
script has.
know.
Yes, tell me. Sorry.
I think we know the answer to this, but the question from Commander was: other than the church, is there any structure in Bombay relating to the Armenians?
There are those graves which are present at Antop Hill.
Besides,
And
yeah.
besides that, we do not have any major structure that at least I know of. I went in search of the graves at Baikala, but now we have a tall tower standing over there, no graves over there. So yeah, it's just the Armenian Church at Meadows Street and the graves at Antop Hill.
So Praveen Tripathi is looking for information on the Armenian Club of Calcutta. Can you direct him to some
I
source?
can direct you to the Armenian Academy. The Armenian Philanthropic Academy at Kolkata is a very good source. You can Google them. You can check them on Facebook. They have their own pages, and you can connect with them. They're very nice people.
The, is the Armenian community in Calcutta largely centered around Bow Street?
Um, they are centered around there. There are pockets. See, what happens is, even when you're looking at a area of Mumbai or Bombay as it was called. Now, Zabel Joshi ma'am also shifted away. She doesn't permanently stay in Mumbai. She stays away. So obviously because of various reasons, whether it is work or business or whatever, the community goes on moving from one place to another. They are in the Armenia Tola, that is the Armenian street, very close to the college and philanthropic academy, but they keep on moving. It's not that they are a stationary community, and that was one very good highlight, and that's what helped them spread through various cities in the Indian subcontinent, from Lahore to Agra to Masulipatam, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Surat, and a few cities, even the eastern region, which includes Calcutta, Hooghly, etc. So there were more than just one pocket in the area of the eastern region of India. There was more than one pocket in the region of Tamil Nadu. There was more than one pocket, most definitely in Agra, but at least for Mumbai, we know that there was one, that is in Fort, main concentration in Fort, and subsequent populations at Baikala and the graves at Antop Hill, and same way for the Surat community. So we know that they are not a stationary community, they are a moving community.
Anuradha makes an observation that the Armenian church in Calcutta is in close proximity to the synagogue, and she observes that that is the case also in Singapore. So, what is the relationship between the Baghdadi Jews and the Armenian communities? Was there any? Did they trade with each other? Were there cultural exchanges?
This is a topic of a little more research because I'm not so very well oriented to the Baghdadi Jews. But if you're looking at it as a trading community, definitely they are following the same pattern and similar routes. Where they're following similar practices. They are also liaisoning with people like the British, the French, and stuff like that. So obviously the trade centers would have been the same. Locations would have been closer, just like as you have the Roman Catholic church at Agra, that is Akbar's church, a community which got the patronage of the emperor. Same way you have the Armenians who had the patronage of the emperor. Along with this, you have the fort area in Mumbai. You have the Armenians in fort area. You have the Roman Catholics with their seminary and their cathedral also in fort area. So obviously there are mercantile communities, there are religious communities who would move together, who would secure permissions from these various political entities, and they would get these sections or streets very close in proximity to each other.
So you've enthused Nikhil Katyal to get and go inside the Bombay church. How does he get in?
Maybe when all of these things sort out, we'll go on a heritage walk.
Perfect. We are
I'll
booking
take you
you
there.
right away.
I'll take you there on a Saturday evening or a Sunday morning after the liturgy is over.
Right. We all are looking forward to that. We'll take you up on that very soon. Hopefully, as soon as things ease up a little.
Ease out. Definitely. I'm all game. I'm also waiting to go with it.
Uh, I'm not sure I understand this question. Tanya wants to know what kind of myths are there about Indian Armenians?
One particular myth was that Akbar's wife was an Armenian,
Yes, you
which I
mentioned.
debunked earlier, and we know that she was a Rajputana lady. Second is that the lady Juliana was also Armenian, which I debunked, and I told you that she was a Portuguese lady. oriented towards Roman Catholicism and the Portuguese. A third myth, a very early myth, is that a person called as Thomas Kana was an Armenian. Thomas Kana is associated with the Knaya community in southern India. He was one of these merchants who bought Syriac Christian community in India. So he's not basically an Armenian. Earlier sources called him an Armenian merchant, but I would not say he's an Armenian merchant. He would have been a Syriac or Syriac or Aramaic speaking person rather than an
Arabic.
Armenian person. So there's where something was lost out in translation, and from a Pahlavi speaker, a Syriac speaker, Aramaic speaker, he becomes an Armenian merchant all of a sudden. Maybe he frequented one of those ports. Maybe he came through that region. But the Kana region was is one of the ports which is oriented more towards these people of the Sassanids and Persian Christian community.
So Dr. Juliet Miranda says that she was happy to share that she was baptized at the Cathedral of Immaculate, the Immaculate Cathedral in Agra, which she says that was the first Armenian church.
Oh wow! So that means you are part Armenian. You're part of that heritage. You've gone to the sacred grounds. You're luckier than me, ma'am.
Moving on. Right. Does the Armenian script resemble or relate to ancient Greek script, or is it
It
like a
is something.
standalone thing?
It's somewhat evolved in the area of Armenia, and some of the characters very distinctively look like Brahmi characters of the Indian subcontinent.
Mhm.
So I was also, but the sounds and the words the sounds associated with those characters are not similar to the languages that we find in the Indian subcontinent. So they are diverse, and the Armenian script is like almost like a standalone. It looks somewhat like the Coptic script. It looks somewhat similar to various scripts in that region, but in a way, it's a standalone entity with a standalone language, a very unique language to the area of Armenia.
Dr. Juliet Miranda also adds that there is a cemetery besides the church, which we were told was one. It has one of the bodies of graves of one of the Armenian founders. Dr. Ashish Kelkar wants to know where he can read more about the Bombay Armenians.
The Bombay.
Was it reflected in the census? Are there any numbers he's asking?
Okay, so my primary source was Mesrov Shad's book, and because I focused on Bombay local history, so I took an active approach for the current people rather than focusing more on the archival sources. So yes, definitely there should be mentions in the Bombay archives, specifically the ones located at Kalagoda. So that is one good place to start off. Secondly, Mesrov Shad's book has one page. The second article, which mentions the Bombay Armenian community, is that by Nuart Mehta in the Bombay Explorer. And the third article, which is the expanded version of that, is fortunately by me again in the Bombay Explorer. So yes, I'm trying to build up that narrative slowly but surely.
So you didn't mention you had met Nuwat Mehta.
No, I had not met Nuat Mehta. I had met
Okay,
Zabel Joshi.
all right. She was one of the very early members of the Bombay Local History
Bombay Local
Society, as you
History
probably
Society.
know.
Yeah,
And she used to have a Christmas tree at her lovely home and on facing the Apollo Bunder.
yeah,
So people who were part of the Bombay Local History Society at that time would remember her. So what
definitely.
was Akbar's interest with the Armenians? Was it primarily trade, or was it because he was
He was
so
this
questioning of
cosmopolitan
religion?
ruler. Yes, yes. It
Yeah.
was a second. He was more cosmopolitan based. He loved various religions. He loved various ideas. So he used to get all of these people, make them sit amongst his court and listen to them. And this is where it was almost like a double advantage that worked. So the community spread its roots and religion, and it also worked in a trade motive. So these people continued as traders. He invited these traders to come to his capital from Kashmir, and their primary interest would not have been spreading of the religion. That happened by default because of the emperor's great interest in religion, but they continued with their trade. So it happened both simultaneously, the trade and the religion. Akbar was more interested in the religious point of view.
As he was with other faiths
With other
also.
faiths, definitely, definitely.
Ketan observes that there is an Armani Tola in Dhaka also.
Yes, 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 yes. That is where Bishop Johannesyan Gregoris visited. He visited that particular Armani Tola. I'm just trying to figure out whether he visited any areas in India, because he was in charge of India, China, Japan, and Burma, and the other regions in the Southeast Asian plate.
When we talk about the building of Bombay, the other communities besides the usual, the Parsis, the Maharashtrians, come into picture are the Jews. And people talk about David Sassoon. Is there any person of that stature who was responsible for making Bombay great in the late 19th and early 20th century?
With regards to the Armenian community, specifically, we get to know of this person called Jacob Petrus, along with various other people, few merchants. But Jacob Petrus's name comes out first because of the Armenian church that he set up and the various trade, trade activities that were going on. We also have various other merchants who are mentioned by Kolkata records. They are mentioned in British records, and they have helped facilitate British trade. And usually we don't get them in the area of Bombay, because they are rather subdued entities to the greater standing entities like the Parsis, uh, etc. But they are dwarfed in comparison to them. But if you go to Calcutta, you will get them present in British records as high merchants and facilitators in a way. In Bombay, they serve like a background clockwork to, British mercantile activities and stuff like that.
Rachel's question come observation. In Roman Catholicism, we have a different color worn by the priest during Mass on different occasions. Is that the same practice in the amongst the Armenians?
The Armenian Christians, along with the various Oriental Orthodox rites, usually where the color of the celebrant is usually the brightest colors. So you can wear anything which looks as bright and as jhatak as possible, and not because the Eucharist or the Surp Badarak or the Kurbana is a celebration of the Eucharistic mystery, etc., etc. So they wear bright colors. Usually they come in contrasting colors, and bright meaning it has to be gold, it has to be red, it has to be maroon, all of these richly embroidered fabrics. And Armenians were also tent makers, so you know that these people were using the similar high quality tent material, which had these embroideries for their
Wow.
particular vestments and
Wow.
curtains and stuff like that. And thankfully, it's very fortunate that even I pulled down the curtains at my place and I made those vestments. I came to know
I
later
was
that
I was going to make that comparison,
yeah.
yes. Again, staying with Agra, and Juliet Miranda seems to have a lot of affinity for Agra. How did the Armenian Church of Agra come to be with the Roman Catholics?
The Armenian community declined in such a way, and the Roman Catholic community grew. So one community took over the other, and the church was rebuilt later on and taken over by the Catholic community at the area of Agra. In this case,
Mm,
see, if you look at the Bombay situation, the church, the entity remained. So in this case, that the Syriac Christian community in a way asked for permission and uses the church. But in the Agra case, there was no building because it was demolished. It was rebuilt
mhm.
by the Catholic community, and then it was used by the Catholic community when the Armenian community dwindled in the area of Agra. So there are no people, there are no
Okay.
patrons for a new building. Someone else builds a new building on that site, and it is used by them. It is what you may call as adaptive reuse of the space rather than the building.
Okay. Um, I'm sure that the question is, the Muslim names of the Armenian traders, were they intent to pass themselves off as Muslim Arabs while traveling through Arabia or Iran, or
They
was there
usually
a
see the Khwaja word that comes. Khwaja is something like a title. So these were given by the writers in the Mughal courts to these particular people. Secondly, names like Iskandar. is basically Alexander. So these are very common names in that whole region, which could be manipulated, and they could be used by various groups of people. And the Armenian community knew Armenian, they knew Persian, and they could pass off, and they could be working in either a Mughal court or a bureaucratic department over there. They could be working even in the British court because they soon picked up English as well. So they were very adaptive and very cosmopolitan in their nature, in their names, in their culture, in their work as well.
Rimala points out that that the Fairlawn Hotel in Sadar Street is owned by a Armenian Indian family,
Oh,
led by one Mrs. Smith, and she calls the lady fascinating and colorful. That's something you might want to examine
take,
further.
yes, definitely, definitely, definitely.
And the last question, could you tell us a little about Armenian food?
Oh, this is something which I have not worked on because I love rituals. I love the incense, the smells, the songs, and stuff like that. But I've heard that the food, one of these interesting dishes that I've heard would have been served in the Armenian street as per oral tradition that I get to know, is a pumpkin dish. That is, you take a full pumpkin, you slice it up, you fill it with rice and meat, and you bake the pumpkin. So the
Okay.
full family, maybe during Christmas or I don't recall the name, but during Christmas or New Year, the full pumpkin is baked with the rice and the meats in it, and it is brought to the family table, and the full family enjoys this sort of community, familial dish or a festal dish during these the the holy days or the celebratory days like a Christmas or a New Year, or a nativity feast, which is basically your Epiphany, 6th of January. So I get to know of this one dish which should have been shared by the Armenians in Armenia and the Armenian Christian community in Bombay specifically.
And Gor Jihanian mentions that this dish is called Gapama, Ghapama.
Okay, so thank you for this thing, clarifying that particular bit. Thank you so much. Yeah.
With that, I think we've reached the end of our questions. It was truly fascinating, Jason. You merged geography, culture, religion into such a little concise package. And I'm sure everyone's the richer for it. Thank you, everybody, for attending.